Hello footy fans, welcome to another episode of Bev's Footy Show for 2017. This episode is for after round 20, and let's get straight into having a look at the episode agenda for the show. I'm going to start off the show by having a look back at the round 20 results. There were some interesting games played and some interesting results out of round 20, so I will be having a look at those results at the start of this show. I'm then going to have a look at the ladder and how those results have affected the AFL ladder. The stats wrap-up is coming up. I'm then going to get into the 5 talking points of the week, and then to finish off the show, I'm going to go through the round 21 matches and tips. Cannot wait for round 21. I'm actually going to a couple of matches in round 21, so looking forward to talking about that at the back end of this episode. But let's start off the show by having a look back at the round 20 results. Round 20 started on Friday night at Simonds Stadium. Geelong played host to the Sydney Swans in a match which it's fair to say was probably the match of the round heading into round 20. And even though the Cats got off to a relatively good start early on in the first quarter, the Swans hit back and well, they basically took in a comprehensive lead at quarter time, and it basically went from there, and the Sydney Swans got a comprehensive win over the Cats, which, well, it was a horror night for the Cats. Joel Selwood suffered an ankle injury. He's out for the remainder of the home and away season. They do hope to get him back before finals. Also a couple of suspensions to come out of the game as well. So a very horrible night in terms of the Geelong Football Club, especially at their home ground of Simonds Stadium. But a very good win by the Sydney Swans, a comprehensive win by the Swans. They seem to have the edge over the Cats in recent times, and of course a good win considering a good bounce-back win, I should say, from the Swans after that loss to Hawthorn the week before at the MCG. So the final score was Geelong 8-13-61, defeated by the Sydney Swans 16-11-107 in front of 30,833 at Simonds Stadium. Let's move on to the Saturday games. I start with the GWS Giants and Melbourne game, which was played in front of 14,274 at Canberra Oval, and well, the GWS Giants pretty much dominated Melbourne. It was a pretty poor display by the Ds, and it doesn't do their cause for finals any good. But in terms of the Giants, though, it was good to see them win a game which was a pretty good win, if that makes sense. They only got over the line by the Dockers by 12 points the week before, so a very good win, probably their best win in the last month or so for the Giants. The final score, the Giants 14-13-97 defeated Melbourne 10-62. The other Saturday afternoon game was a ripper. It was between Essendon and Carlton at the MCG, and played in front of over 58,000, and the Bombers, it was a very narrow win, an 8-point win to the Bombers. Carlton really did take it up to them in this game. The final score, the Bombers 11-18-84 defeated Carlton 11-10-76. The twilight game was a very interesting one between the Brisbane Lions and the Dogs, and even though the Dogs got off to a very good start in the first quarter, they let the Lions back in the game in the second quarter and only had a narrow lead at half time. The Lions, however, really did put the pressure on the Dogs and really dominated the Dogs in the third quarter to lead by 11 points. They restricted the Dogs to only 5 behinds in the third quarter to themselves 5 goals, but they couldn't keep it going in the fourth quarter, even though they lost the lead early on in the fourth. They did take back the lead, the Lions, midway through the fourth, but the Dogs were able to get the job done and win by 14 points thanks to the likes of Bontempelli, McLean, Picken and some other players. The final score, Lions 13-11-89, defeated by the Western Bulldogs 14-19-103 in front of 16,148 at the Gabba. The two Saturday night games, one of them being at Etihad Stadium. It was probably the worst game of the year, it's fair to say that. And of course, the big talking point out of the game between North Melbourne and Collingwood was the fact that Ben Brown got concussed by Brodie Grundys, who put on a tackle that some people call perfect, but unfortunately it's not perfect in the modern era anymore. The final score being North Melbourne 7-15. 57, defeated by Collingwood 16-15, 111. Like I said, probably the worst game of 2017. The skills were absolutely terrible. It was played in front of 33,394 at Etihad Stadium. The final Saturday game was at Domain Stadium in Perth between Fremantle and the Gold Coast Suns. The Suns took it up to the Dockers, but the Dockers too strong in the end. 12-8-90 Fremantle defeated the Gold Coast Suns 10-7-67, who of course has since sacked their coach in Rodney Eade. That has been a big story during this week. 3 Sunday games. The early Sunday afternoon game was at Etihad Stadium between St Kilda and the Eagles. The Eagles seemed to lead this game throughout the majority of the match, but St Kilda just kept coming and coming, and then the fourth quarter they were able to get in front and win the game and send the Eagles back down the ladder. The final score, St Kilda 15-13, 103, defeated the West Coast Eagles 14-11-95 in front of 22,688 at Etihad. The mid-Sunday afternoon game was between Richmond and Hawthorn. The Tigers comprehensive winners over the Hawks. Their finals, final chances are now done. Richmond, they start to put themselves in that frame of premiership contenders. Richmond 13-15-93 defeated Hawthorn 19-64 in front of 58,342 at the MCG. And the final game of the round was an absolute one-sided clash. The Adelaide Crows thumped Port Adelaide 18-12, 130 to Port Adelaide 7-4-46 in front of just over 45,000 people at Adelaide Oval. Probably one of the worst performances of the year from Port Adelaide. And well, from a Crows point of view, they are solidating themselves as the ones to beat going into the finals. They are definitely the premiership favourites, no question about that. A very good performance by them on Sunday. So that is the round 20 results. On now to how those results have affected the AFL ladder. So the AFL ladder is still very, very close after round 20. The Crows are top of the table. You would think they would finish top of the table now. They are on 58 points. The GWS Giants are on 52 points, level with Richmond, who have moved up to third on the ladder. Fourth is Geelong. They are just hanging on to a top 4 spot, 4 points clear of Port Adelaide, Swans and Dogs, who are all level on 44 points each. Port Adelaide having the better percentage out of both the Sydney Swans and the Western Bulldogs. You then have Essendon, the West Coast Eagles, Melbourne and St Kilda, all level on 40 points each. Essendon is 8th, hence they are 8th because they have a better percentage than those teams. The Eagles 9th, Melbourne 10th and St Kilda 11th. Of course, Melbourne and St Kilda meet at the MCG this Sunday. That is going to be a ripper. And anyway, on now to the other half of the ladder. Collingwood at 12th, level on points with Hawthorn, have the better percentage than Hawthorn. They're on 34 points each. 14th is Fremantle on 32 points, and then you have the Gold Coast Suns on 24 points in 15th. They have the better points. They're 4 points clear of North Melbourne and Carlton, who are in the middle of that bottom 4, and the Brisbane Lions currently sitting in the wooden spoon position on 16 points. However, I don't think they'll finish bottom of the ladder. I reckon they'll get a couple of wins in the next 3 weeks, and I reckon it's probably a possibility that the Blues will finish in that wooden spoon position and get pick 1. So yeah, relatively tight still as the race continues for a top 8 place come the end of round 23. It's a very close ladder at the moment. On now to the stats wrap up. Okay, time now for the stats wrap up after round 20. Let's get straight into it, starting with the leading disposal getters, and Tom Mitchell still leads. He leads on 676 disposals. Second is Matt Crouch on 612. Third is Zach Merritt, who has been suspended, won't take any part in Essendon's up and coming game, and in fact is ruled out for the Brownlow, so that is big news. But he is third on 584 disposals. Fourth is Andrew Gaff from the Eagles on 580 disposals, and then fifth is Rory Lard on 575 disposals. The leading goal kickers, Danaher leads on 56 goals, kicked 3 against Colton on Saturday. Josh Kennedy kicked a bag of 5 goals. However, that didn't get the Eagles over the line against St Kilda. But anyway, he's second on 54 goals. Third is Lance Franklin, who only kicked 1 against Geelong. He sits on 52 goals. Fourth is Ben Brown on 51, who kicked none. Of course, his game ended quite early because of that concussion. And then fifth is Tom Hawkins, who kicked 3 against the Swans in round 20. He is fifth on 46 goals. The leading marks, Sam Doherty leads the marks on 175. Second is Jeremy Howe on 153 marks. Third is Jeremy McGovern on 144 marks. Fourth is Michael Hurley on 143 marks. And then fifth is Kate Simpson on 138 marks. The tackles, Rory Sloane leads the tackles on 144. Second is Brad Ebert from the Power on 141. Third is Clayton Oliver on 138. Fourth is Jack Steele on 132. And then fifth is Dane Zorko on 129 tackles. So that is the stats wrap up for after round 20. Time now for the 5 talking points of the week. Let's get straight into it. My first talking point is the career of Matthew Boyd. Of course, announced his retirement earlier this week. And, well, I want to show you a graphic from my Western Bulldogs only show, which I do on this YouTube channel called After the Dogs Roar. Had a look I showed this graphic on the show and had a look. It basically goes through the achievements that Matthew Boyd has made over his AFL career. He debuted in 2003, has played 291 games, could add to that with 3 games remaining in the home and away season, plus finals if the Dogs make it. Captained the side in 2011 through to 2013, which was through some tough times in terms of the club. He has been awarded 3 All-Australians, 3 Sutton medals, and of course added a premiership to his name last year in 2016. He's had a remarkable career, Matthew Boyd. Hat off to him. Being a Western Bulldogs supporter, I have loved every minute he's played. He's always given everything to the club, and he will definitely be missed. So congratulations to Matthew Boyd on a fantastic career, and I hope to see him play at least one more game before the end of the 2017 season before he retires. Talking point number 2, Geelong v Richmond should be played at the MCG. Of course, these two teams meet in round 21 at Simmons Stadium this Saturday afternoon, and there's been a bit of debate whether these two sides actually should be meeting at the MCG, considering their past attendances and considering how big these two clubs are, and well, considering that Simmons Stadium doesn't have as much of capacity as what the MCG does, and considering the attraction to these two clubs, you would think that the AFL would have scheduled this game at the MCG, but they haven't. They've scheduled it at Simmons Stadium. I guess we just have to accept that, even though there's going to be about 40,000 odd locked out to the game on Saturday afternoon. We just have to accept the fact that yeah, the AFL has decided to schedule this one at Simmons Stadium, and I suppose, would have been probably the right thing to do to schedule it at the MCG, because more people means more money and more ticket sales and more people there and more attendance numbers and I guess a greater attendance number than what you would have at a Simmons Stadium. So, look, I think it should be played at the MCG considering how big these two teams are. But, Geelong has their own home ground. It's a redeveloped venue, and I know they're keen to play as many games there in the season as possible, and this will be a huge one for the venue on Saturday afternoon. Talking point number 3, Brodie Grundys' tackle on Ben Brown. Was always going to talk about it on this show, and I know that there's been a lot of debate throughout the week since the incident on Saturday night. We know that Brodie Grundy didn't intend to hurt Ben Brown and actually concuss Ben Brown, and Nathan Buckley quoted it was the perfect tackle in his press conference, but we have to accept that that's not the tackle method anymore. That shouldn't be the tackling method anymore, because by doing that you run the risk of the player you're tackling getting concussed, and we saw that on Saturday night with Ben Brown, thanks to the Brodie Grundys tackle on him. So, look, the coaches now have to, and I guess this is probably something for the end of the year, but the coaches now have to, coach their players to tackle in a way that's not going to harm the player they're tackling, that's not going to hurt them to an extent where they have to go to hospital like Ben Brown. And look, you could probably argue that Grundy probably didn't deserve to get 2 weeks because he didn't intend on concussing Ben Brown, but he did. And unfortunately, that's just not the way you can tackle anymore in the AFL, because injuries happen, and concussion's a very, very serious thing in the competition. So I think the coaches and so forth need to find a way to coach players on another method of tackling, and a risk-free way of tackling that's not going to hurt the person they're tackling. Talking point number 4, whoever loses out of Melbourne and St Kilda this weekend won't make finals. I think that is true. I think whoever loses this Sunday at the MCG between these two sides, of course they're playing each other at the MCG on Sunday, whoever loses out of Melbourne and St Kilda probably won't make finals in 2017, because it is going to be quite hard to get back after losing this game, because they both have relatively winnable games in the last 2 weeks after this game. St Kilda have North Melbourne, and then they have Richmond. Well, actually, Richmond's not a winnable game. Actually, I take that back. I take that back completely, because even though St Kilda did beat Richmond earlier in the year, that probably won't be the case in round 23. So this is probably a must-win for St Kilda, because they do have that tough match against Richmond in round 23. But Melbourne is the one that has 2 winnable games in the last 2 games, with the Brisbane Lions and then Collingwood. So, look, I totally agree with that. They're level on 40 points each. They're not even in the top 8, but if they want to make the top 8, these two sides, then they must win this week. And I guess it's a little bit of an elimination final this Sunday at the MCG between St Kilda and Melbourne. I'm actually heading to this game, and I cannot wait for it. It is going to be huge. Final talking point is Tom Hawkins' punching habits. I couldn't believe it when he jumper punched again on the weekend. He's already been suspended, I think, twice for it now, or fined for the first instance, and then I guess suspended for the second. I can't actually remember or recall, but he was suspended for the last time he did it, which wasn't that long ago. It was against the Adelaide Crows just a couple of months ago now, and he needs to stop doing it. As soon as he did it, I thought, nah, you're gone, because you've done it so many times, and the AFL are cracking down on this sort of thing. So, the club needs to help him. The club needs to educate him so that he doesn't keep doing it, because, Geelong, it's a must-win game for them on Saturday in reality against the Tigers if they want to make top 4, and they've lost one of their best forwards, their best key forwards, for that match, which is going to be huge, and it's not really good from a Geelong point of view. So, Tom Hawkins needs to get out of his punching habits and needs to get out of them fast, because if he keeps doing it, he's going to get more and more weeks for it. Okay, let's now get into having a look at the round 21 matches as well as my tips. Some very interesting and big games coming up in round 21. It's no question about that. It all starts on Friday night, Friday the 11th of August at 7:50 p.m. when the Western Bulldogs and the GWS Giants return to the Friday night stage to meet each other. This game at Etihad Stadium. I'm actually heading to this game and really cannot wait for it. You can watch it live on 7 and Fox Footy if you're not attending the match. I'm going to tip the Western Bulldogs because, of course, you all know why I tip the Western Bulldogs each and every week, because they are my side. But I actually genuinely think they will win this Friday night. Of course, the last time they met back in round 6, the Giants defeated the Dogs by 2 points in what was an absolute cracker. Of course, they met last year in the preliminary final at Spotless, and the Dogs won that match to put themselves into the 2016 Grand Final. It's going to be a huge match, a great way to start off round 21. Saturday, there is 5 games as usual. The first one being at the SCG between the Sydney Swans and Fremantle. This game starting at 1:45 p.m. You can watch it on Fox Footy. I would expect that the Sydney Swans will be comprehensive winners over the Dockers on Saturday. The other Saturday afternoon game, we've already spoken about it in the 5 talking points of the week. Geelong and Richmond, 2:10 p.m. at Simmons Stadium. Going to be a massive game. You can watch it on Fox Sports 3. I'm going to tip Geelong because of the fact that the Tigers haven't won in Geelong since 2006, and even though they're in ripping form, the Cats do get back Patrick Dangerfield, and yeah, look, I've been very impressed with Richmond this year. I was very impressed with how they went against Hawthorn, but I just can't tip against Geelong at Simmons Stadium at home with that stat hanging over Richmond. And of course I did tip against Geelong last week, but the Swans have actually won at Simmons Stadium in recent times heading into that game. So yeah, I'm going to tip Geelong. Not too confident about it, but I actually do generally think because of that stat they will win, especially with Patrick Dangerfield back in the side. The twilight game is the Queensland, or the Q Clash they call it, at 4:35 p.m. The Brisbane Lions meeting the Gold Coast Suns at the Gabba. You can watch this one on Fox Footy. I'd be expecting the Brisbane Lions to win this one. They played some very good footy against the Dogs in round 20. The Lions have won 2 of the last 3 when these two sides have met. So I think the Brisbane Lions will win. Of course, the Gold Coast Suns having a tough week with their coach sacked. At 7:25 p.m, Essendon meet the Adelaide Crows on Saturday night at Etihad Stadium. You can watch this one on 7 and Fox Footy. This is another game I'm going to in round 21. And well, this is going to be a very interesting match because it's 3v1 in terms of high scoring. Essendon are 3rd in the comp for high scoring. Adelaide Crows ranked 1st for high scoring in the competition. Crows have won the last 3 against the Bombers. Of course, they did meet earlier in the year at the Adelaide Oval. Crows were comprehensive winners against the Bombers, but I don't think it will turn out this way at this time they meet on Saturday night in round 21, because I'm actually expecting a closer game than that match earlier in the year. Nonetheless, I'm going with the Adelaide Crows. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing the top team in the competition at the moment, because they're playing some really cracking footy at the moment. The other Saturday night game is at Domain Stadium in Perth, 5:40 p.m. local, 7:40 p.m. Eastern. The West Coast Eagles taking on Carlton. You can watch this game on Fox Sports 3. I'm going to stick with the West Coast Eagles. They should be too strong for the Blues, and they should bounce back and keep their top 8 chances alive. 3 games on Sunday, the 13th of August. The early one being at 1:10 p.m. between Melbourne and St Kilda at the MCG. You can watch this one on Fox Footy. It's going to be a cracker, and of course I am going to this match as well. Cannot wait to head to the G on Sunday. And yeah, you know, Melbourne, they did defeat St Kilda for the first time in round 1 out of the 14 times they met before that clash. They actually broke a 14 game hoodoo against St Kilda in round 1. And however, Melbourne have not won 2 in a row against St Kilda since 2006. I'm going to go with Melbourne though, just with the fact that last time I tipped against Melbourne at the MCG when they were coming off a poor interstate win, they managed to bounce back and win pretty convincingly, and that was against Port Adelaide. So I'm going to go Melbourne, but I think it should be a ripper. And like I said, it's going to be a bit of an elimination final, an early elimination final for these two sides. Cannot wait for it on Sunday. The mid-Sunday afternoon game at 3:20 p.m. is between Hawthorn and North Melbourne, down in Launceston at UTAS Stadium. You can watch this game on 7 and Fox Sports 3. A bit of North v South rivalry, isn't it, at UTAS Stadium on Sunday. Going to go Hawthorn. I think they should be too strong for North Melbourne, especially being that it is being played at UTAS Stadium. And then the final game of round 21, Port Adelaide taking on Collingwood at the Adelaide Oval, 4:10 p.m. local, 4:40 p.m. Eastern. You can watch it on Fox Footy. I'm going to go Port Adelaide, but could be a good game, but I'm going to go Port Adelaide to bounce back after that horrible loss against the Adelaide Crows last week. So that is the round 21 matches and my tips. And that is it for this week's episode of Bev's Footy Show. Thank you very much for watching. Of course, don't forget to like, comment, share this video if you enjoyed it. And don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date with a new episode of this each and every week up until after the grand finals. So make sure you do press that subscribe button. And, well, until next week, I'm Bev. Enjoy round 21. I know I will. Bye for now.